Brian, a former CIA agent, is divorced and now lives alone in an apartment in Los Angeles to be closer to his 17-year-old daughter, Kim. Kim has always loved singing and horseback riding, and she currently stays with her mom, Lenore, and her affluent stepfather, Stuart. Brian is deeply dedicated to Kim and fears losing her like he lost his marriage, so he tries hard to spend as much time with her as possible and to keep her happy. On Kim's birthday, Brian brings her a karaoke machine, attending the celebration at Stuart's grand house. Despite Lenore's cold reception and her strict instructions not to personally give Kim the gift or take pictures, Brian prioritizes Kim's joy and breaks these rules. Kim is thrilled with the karaoke machine and reaffirms her dream of becoming a singer, much to Brian's delight. However, her excitement quickly shifts when she sees Stuart's more extravagant gift, making Brian's gesture seem insignificant in comparison. That evening, Brian meets with his old co-workers for a barbecue. One of them, Sam, notices Brian's current jobless state and offers him an easy gig, $2,500 for a few hours' work and the chance to meet a famous female pop star. Brian quickly accepts the job offer. He and his former CIA colleagues reunite, not for a covert mission abroad, but to escort the pop star to her concert, marking a significant change in the nature of their teamwork. Sam is in charge of the operation, while Brian serves as the girl's personal bodyguard. With his daughter's love for singing in mind, he seeks advice from a pop diva. The conceited diva sharply replies, "Tell her to find another career." After the performance, the crowd breaks through security and rushes inside. Brian swiftly moves the girl away from the fans, but a knife-wielding assailant blocks their path. Brian takes the attacker down effortlessly and quickly gets the singer to safety. To comfort her, he offers her a shoulder to cry on, which changes the dynamics between them. To thank him for saving her, the girl promises to support his daughter's dream by providing her with a voice coach, manager, and covering all related expenses. The next day, Brian meets Kim and her mother at a coffee house. Just as he's about to reveal the pop star's offer, Kim eagerly announces that she wants to go to Paris with a friend and needs his approval. Brian suggests he accompany her to keep her safe. However, since traveling with her dad isn't appealing to a teenager and Brian feels uneasy about sending her so far away, the discussion fails, leaving Kim disappointed. Lenore follows and chastises Brian for being too protective and a nuisance before joining her daughter. Brian, on the brink of losing his daughter, reluctantly agrees to 3 conditions: knowing where she'll stay, whom she'll meet, and maintaining constant phone contact. Kim is ecstatic and immediately agrees upon hearing the conditions. At the airport, Brian discovers a map and itinerary in Kim's backpack, indicating that Paris is not her only destination. When he shows these to Lenore, he realizes he has been deceived. Kim actually has tickets to follow a rock band around Europe. Brian loses his temper upon learning this, but is quickly reminded by Lenore of the loneliness he left her and Kim in during his long government missions abroad. She warns him that restricting Kim too much will push her away. Brian reluctantly decides to act unaware and cheerfully sees Kim off. In Paris, Kim and her 19-year-old friend Amanda meet a charismatic young man named Peter while waiting in a taxi line. After taking some pictures of them, he suggests sharing a taxi to save money, to which Amanda enthusiastically agrees. When Peter later invites them to a party, Amanda, unlike the hesitant Kim, can't resist and eagerly accepts. After separating, Peter identifies their exact location and reports it over the phone before leaving. Upon reaching their place, Amanda tells her friend that she plans to sleep with Peter. Kim, being a virgin, views this romantic location as the perfect opportunity to begin her journey. Amanda puts on some music and starts dancing, while Kim heads to the bathroom and misses a call from her father. Halfway across the world, Brian wakes Lenore with a call to share his worries. Lenore, however, is unconcerned and advises him to let their daughter have some freedom before hanging up. When Brian calls his daughter again, she answers, but due to the loud music, she returns to the bathroom, where she can see Amanda. At this moment, Kim notices intruders in the house kidnapping Amanda. Panicking, she informs Brian about the situation. Initially startled, Brian quickly regains composure, turns on his call recording device, and begins directing his daughter. Expressing relief that it's not 2008 anymore, Brian starts by asking Kim if they saw anyone earlier, and she points out Peter. He then instructs her to move to the next room and hide under the bed. When Brian tells Kim she's about to be kidnapped, he instructs her to shout out any identifying details about her abductors. Brian listens, and as the kidnappers come into the room, confirming they aren't French. After they leave briefly, Kim feels momentarily safer, but one kidnapper stays behind and drags her out from under the bed. Scared, She yells out descriptions of the kidnapper: a man with a beard, 6 feet tall, and a tattoo of the moon and stars on his right hand. Brian hears the kidnappers breathing over the phone and warns him about his unique skills, threatening to hunt them down and kill them if Kim isn't released. The kidnapper, however, is unfazed and wishes Brian luck. Brian quickly sends the recorded call to Sam for analysis. He then rushes to talk to Lenore and asks Stuart to arrange a private jet to Paris. Meanwhile, Sam calls back with information. The man Brian spoke to is Marco, the leader of an Albanian gang involved in trafficking and selling women. He also mentions that, at worst, their victims end up as drug addicts and prostitutes, and that he has only 96 hours before his daughter disappears completely. When Lenore hears this, she breaks down in tears and pleads with Brian to bring her daughter back. On his flight to Paris, Brian repeatedly thinks about the 2 words he heard from Marco, trying to commit them to memory. Upon arriving, he heads directly to Kim's apartment and sneaks inside to search for clues. During his search, he finds the memory card from her broken phone. Examining it, he notices Peter's reflection in a photo Kim took earlier. Brian then tracks Peter to the airport, where Peter is setting up another trap for a girl. He forces Peter into a cab and starts demanding Kim's whereabouts by punching him in the ribs. Suddenly, Peter's partner pulls Brian out of the car. Brian fights back, kicking the partner in the crotch, hitting his neck, and slamming his face into the car, but this allows Peter to escape. Brian immediately chases him, but Peter is hit by a truck and dies, leaving Brian without any leads. Desperate, Brian turns to an old friend, Jean-Claude, who now works as a security official at the Ministry of Interior. Jean-Claude points Brian to the Mafia but asks him not to cause any trouble. Brian firmly replies that he will destroy the Eiffel Tower if necessary and leaves. In response, Jean-Claude assigns an agent to keep an eye on Brian. Brian hires a car and drives to the given destination with a translator who speaks both Albanian and English, updating Jean-Claude on his progress. The area is crowded with sex workers. He goes up to one and stops her from pairing with any clients. He repeats this until Mr. Pimperson shows up to demand payment for the missed clients. Brian hands over the money once a tracking device is attached to his jacket. The translator in his car starts interpreting the talk between Mr. Pimperson and his assistant. Brian then sends the translator away and trails them to a construction site for business matters. The Albanian Mafia has assembled a caravan with several holes, each containing a sex worker and divided by curtains. As Brian begins to draw back the curtains to look for Kim, he is horrified to see young girls. Entering thinking he has found his daughter, he finds a girl high like an astronaut, but he also finds Kim's jacket in one of the holes. When he chooses to go with the girl, he comes into multiple bouncers, but one by one, he vanquishes them with deadly blows and amazing abilities. He puts the girl in an SUV and leaves while the Albanians open fire on him. Although they closely pursue Brian, firing at every chance, everyone eventually stops, with Mr. Pimperson specifically suffering a severe accident involving an excavator, resulting in him being split in half. Brian takes the unconscious girl to a hotel, administering Narcan to help purge drugs from her system. When she wakes up, Brian asks her about Kim. Upon seeing Kim's photo, she remembers being with her in the same house for a while. She recounts the night Kim was kidnapped and gives Brian the address and details of the house. Paradise Street, a house with a red door. Constant updates about Brian reach Jean-Claude, who arranges a meeting with him. He goes to the appointed place, but stays hidden. Jean-Claude mentions he knows about the chaos Brian caused in Paris and demands Brian leave the country immediately. Brian refuses, insisting he won't leave without his daughter. Meanwhile, Jean-Claude's men track Brian's phone to arrest him but soon realize Brian has outsmarted them and isn't actually there. Brian heads to the house with the red door, where the Albanians are based, and pretends to be a government official using Jean-Claude's card. He confidently walks into their grimy meeting room and notices the tattoo of a moon and star that Kim described earlier. He claims that the bribe rates have increased and that he's there to collect more money. Though the Albanians initially resist, they quickly agree to pay when they realize Brian knows everything about their criminal activities. He gives a note with good luck, written in Albanian, to Marco's closest match and asks him to translate it. This prompts Brian to recognize Marco's voice and uncover his true identity. Marco tries to attack immediately, but Brian swiftly knocks him unconscious. Brian then stabs one of the men in the chest and uses the body as a shield to kill the others. Hearing the gunshots, other Albanians rush into the room, but Brian camouflages himself among the dead bodies to take them out as they enter, undetected. Brian then heads upstairs, where he finds several young women drugged and handcuffed to beds. Among them, he discovers Amanda's lifeless body due to a drug overdose, but Kim is nowhere to be found. Consequently, he drags Marco to the basement to interrogate him about Kim's location. After torturing Marco, Brian discovers that they sold Kim to a man named St. Clair because she was a virgin. To punish Marco, Brian flips the switch, leaving his body to be electrocuted endlessly. Jean-Claude returns home to find Brian waiting for him. Surprised, Jean-Claude heads to the bathroom, retrieves a pistol hidden under the sink, and comes back to confront Brian at the dinner table. Brian accuses Jean-Claude of working with the Albanians, and it turns out to be true. Jean-Claude pulls his handgun on Brian, ordering him to go back to America immediately. Brian surprises Jean-Claude by showing the bullet he removed from the now unloaded gun, then shoots Jean-Claude's wife in the arm. By threatening his wife, Brian gets the information he needs about St. Clair. He then thanks his old friend by knocking him unconscious. Stepping into Jean-Claude's role, Brian attends a party thrown by St. Clair. After knocking out the receptionist and a few waiters, he sneaks down to the lower levels disguised as a staff member. There, he finds a hallway lined with dark rooms surrounding a central stage. Each room has a wealthy bidder who plans to buy the girl showcased on the stage. Brian enters one of these rooms and encounters an Arab man who has just bought the girl. The announcer then presents the final and supposedly best item of the night, who is described as certified pure, speaks English and some French. To Brian's horror, the girl is his own daughter, disoriented from drugs, and dressed provocatively, being sold like property. Despite his shock, Brian pulls a gun on the buyer and coerces him into purchasing her for $500,000. However, as they are leaving, Brian is struck from behind and knocked unconscious. He regains consciousness to find himself handcuffed and hanging from a pipe, surrounded by St. Clair and his men. Desperate, Brian pleads with St. Clair to return his daughter, even offering to pay for her freedom. However, St. Clair insists that there's no turning back in their line of work. He orders his men to quietly eliminate Brian and departs. One of the henchmen attempts to strangle Brian. While struggling for air, Brian breaks free by damaging the pipe above him and fights back against the guards. He then confronts St. Clair, shooting him and demanding to know Kim's whereabouts. St. Clair gestures towards a boat on the dock, explaining to Brian that it wasn't personal. Despite St. Clair's plea, Brian doesn't spare him, delivering several shots to the chest. Determined to find the boat, Brian locates it and leaps onto it from a bridge. By incapacitating the first guard, he gains access to the lower levels of the boat and resumes his mission. Upon entering the Arab sheikh's quarters, he discovers his daughter being held captive. With a moment of focus, Brian eliminates the sheikh with a single shot to the head. After enduring several exhausting days, he is finally reunited with his daughter. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell if you want to watch more videos like this. Thank you for watching and see you again soon. Take care.